So when the calendar told me that Mother's Day was coming up this Sunday, and I looked down at where exactly we were in the Gospel of Mark, I had one of those moments where you just kind of take a deep breath and you stare up at the ceiling. You say, okay, Jesus, I guess this is where we're at and what we're going to do, what we're going to cover. Because right before where we're going to pick up today in Mark chapter 3, Jesus is talking about what people have come to call, what has come to be known as the unpardonable sin. And I did briefly consider whether the unpardonable sin pairs well with brunch reservations and the flowers and chocolates you have on your dining table right now. And I decided that it did not pair well with that today. So we are going to circle back to the unpardonable sin. We're not going to skip the uncomfortable, more difficult parts of Scripture. But today, as a favor to our moms, we're going to kind of zoom past that section into the end of Mark chapter 3, where he actually does address his biological family, Jesus does. So we'll circle back to the earlier parts of Mark 3 at some point, but today we're pushing toward the end of Mark 3. And before we go any further, I do just want to briefly talk to all the non-moms who are in this space this morning. Lots of us in here. I want to talk to the dads, the single guys, the college students who came today just because your mom guilted you into it, who you all want to be together on Mother's Day. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, man, this is the one Sunday a year, I get absolutely nothing out of whatever is dealt with up there on that stage. I'm just here to survive, score some points, hang on. I hope mom pulls out her credit card at lunch today, wherever we're going. I understand that impulse from you. I get it. But here's what I need you to hear. What I want you to hear is that what we're going to talk about today won't just apply to moms. It will have some very specific applications to moms today, but it will broadly apply to all of us. So hang in there with me. There's something here for all of us. Now here's a quote I came across this last week from a woman named Jill Churchill that I want to start us out with here. She said, "There is no way to be a perfect mother and a million ways to be a good one." And on one level, this probably hits all of us. We get the truth behind that. We already know all too well, moms, don't we, that we are not perfect. But there is a tension that I want us to sit with this morning. God has not ultimately called you to raise good kids. He's called you to raise kids who love Jesus. And those two things are not the same thing. Good kids and kids who love Jesus. Because you can do a great job raising well-behaved kids, respectable children, kids who never embarrass you at the grocery store, kids who make honor roll and make eye contact with adults and thank adults and turn their turn signals on when they're learning to drive. You can do all that with your kids and still miss the deeper thing that Jesus is after here at the end of Mark chapter 3. So yes, there are a million different ways to be a good mom, or to make it more broad for us this morning, a million ways to be a good Christian. But there is only one way to build the kind of family that Jesus calls his own. A few years ago, we were visiting some friends in Dallas, Texas, and we were hanging out in the backyard. They've got kids, and so there were tours all around, all over the place in the backyard. Made me feel a little bit better about my own backyard situation. And so while I was walking through the yard, I just spotted this bow and arrow sitting out there, and I did the sensible thing. I picked that bad boy up, and I tried to fire it into the back fence, tried to fire the arrow into the back fence. Here's the thing, though. The back fence was a fence that barred their back lawn from the schoolyard that was right behind their house. And you could probably see where this is going. The arrow did not, in fact, fly into the fence. It flew over the fence and into the schoolyard, the playground where kids play. By the grace of God, this story does not end with a mugshot, okay? I'm not telling the story from prison. Obviously, no kids were hurt. No, this does not have a bloody ending. But it did get my attention. And I've thought about it in the years since, because the Bible actually uses this kind of imagery to talk about our kids. Check this out in Psalm 127:4. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. That's the picture that God gives us for what parents are called to do. Fire arrows out into the world. And so here's what I want you to see. And again, this is not just for parents here in this space. Think about this. Think about an arrow. An arrow does not shape itself. It does not aim itself. It is being formed by something outside of itself, and it is always being directed by whoever is holding the bow, which means every single person in this room is being shaped by something. If we were all children of our mothers at one point, we are all arrows being aimed out into the world as adults, or even children being sort of whittled away and formed as aerodynamic arrows even now. So the question has never been for us, are we being formed? Is formation happening in our homes? That is not the question. It is happening. And so I want to talk about one pathway to formation today, all right? One pathway for forming the arrows that God has given to us if we are parents, and for thinking about ourselves as arrows if we are not, in fact, parents. So let's get into the passage here at the end of Mark chapter 3. We're going to start in verse 31. But we need to see what's happening around it first. Kind of the context here is important for us to navigate. So starting in verse 7, you can see that all these crowds are flooding to Jesus from all the surrounding areas. It's like an electric moment in the Jesus movement. More and more people are coming to see this Jesus figure. The movement is growing. But then in verse 20 and 21, the scene shifts just a little bit. Jesus goes home. The crowd follows him there. They want more of what Jesus has to offer. And so things get so intense there in this home that they're not even able to eat at all together, he and his disciples. And then his family hears about what's going on here at this house and surrounding this house and all this Jesus stuff that's happening. And so verse 21 tells us that they actually go out to find Jesus to do an intervention. They're like, things are getting weird fast, Jesus, and we need to come sort of protect you from whatever movement you think you're trying to build, whatever momentum you think you have. This is weird, and it's going over the top. As far as they're concerned, Jesus has absolutely lost it. He's lost his marbles. And their verdict on his public ministry is that, yeah, we need to get him before this gets any worse right now. Let's protect him from his own, up and to the right ministry growth that he's experiencing right now. And so he had become something pretty quickly that they did not expect. And he was no longer kind of fitting neatly into the categories that they had for this Jesus, the guy that they grew up with, the guy that they sat across the table from and learned the way that he laughed and learned the way that he played and enjoyed his carpentry skills. People who knew Jesus, suddenly he was outside of this category that they had set for this Jesus person. And so they're coming to rescue him. Here's what is, I think, subtle and devastating about Jesus's family approach to Jesus here. You can be around Jesus your whole life. You can be around Jesus your whole life. Many of our stories in here, being around Jesus our whole lives, and yet still be outside. Not necessarily rejecting him. His parents, his family is outside this house while Jesus is ministering inside this house. Not so much rejecting Jesus, but just managing him, letting maybe him advise your life, but not allowing him to be central and run your life. That's not salvation, no. That is a consultant relationship with the Son of God, which is what his family had come to enjoy with Jesus, just a consultant relationship rather than the driving engine of their formation. So you got these two groups around Jesus here. And notice the physical detail that Mark gives us. It's really important. Check it out in verse 31. Again, Jesus' family is outside of this house, but in verse 32, this crowd, these strangers, are inside the house at the feet of Jesus. So looking outside the windows of this house at his family, and then at the people sitting at his feet, Jesus says, hey, here, right here, these people seated at my feet, this is my actual family. These are my family, not those people out there. So a crowd pressing in because they want him, and a family stepping in because they think they need to manage him. These are the two groups, and we got to sort through which of these two groups we are a part of today. One group that's being formed by Jesus, listening and learning from him, and then one group outside trying to step in to fit Jesus into what already made sense to them. So hold that tension for just a second, because it is going to plop neatly right into the middle of your living room here in just a second, okay? Now we come to the text. Let's read it together. Mark chapter 3, verses 31 to 35. And his mother and brothers came, and standing outside, they sent to him and called him. And the crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you." And he answered them, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" And looking about at those who sat around him, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother." Now, if you were to just kind of stumble across this little piece of the Jesus story with no context, it can feel a little bit jarring. To me, it sounds and it feels a little bit harsh, the way that Jesus is talking about his family. If I said something like this to my mom on Mother's Day, I would be lucky to get a card in the mail from her for my birthday, let alone a gift. It seems like he's being just a little cold to his mom and to his family. So what is Jesus doing here? What's he doing? Because he's not dishonoring Mary in the ultimate sense, Mary, his mother. If you keep tracking with his journey, you will see him caring for her all the way to the cross, even caring for her while he's hanging on the cross, making sure she is well cared for after his death. Right here, he's actually just redefining what it means to be in the Jesus family. That's what's happening here, not a dishonoring of his family, redefining what true family is, which means family in the kingdom, the capital K kingdom of God, is not ultimately defined by biology, being in God's family, not by your last name, not by your blood type, not by a shared Netflix password and login, right? That's what defines some of our families. Get in on those parents' monthly payments to Netflix for sure. True family is defined by posture toward Jesus, and this has massive implications for everyone seated in this space this morning. The question is, where are you? Are you outside in proximity to Jesus, near enough to see him, to hear him maybe, but not really letting him be a part of your life, like the authoritative center of it all? Or are you inside, sitting at his feet, surrendering your plans, organizing your home around his will? So moms, here's what this means for you specifically. One of the highest callings in all of your life is to raise children who love another man more than they love you. Capital M man, Jesus. The highest calling in your life is to raise a child who loves another man more than they love you. Not less than you, not instead of you, but this is going to take intention from you to create a home in an atmosphere like this. It takes a willingness to entrust them over to the Lord who made them, to open your hands and let the archer, the capital A archer, actually let him fire them out into the world. And so the question for us this morning that I want to answer just very practically is, how do we create homes that allow the capital A archer to fire out the arrows of our children out into the darkness, to light it up for the glory of King Jesus and for the good of the world that so needs the hope and the help that comes at the hands of King Jesus? So that's where we're heading this morning. So the first observation I want to make for us is that your home is already a disciple factory. Whether or not you intend it to be, your home is already a disciple factory. It's already forming arrows, you as arrows and the other people in your home as arrows. Here's what I mean by that. Right now, your rhythms at home are producing something like a factory does. Your home is forming the people under your roof into particular kinds of people with a particular set of values, with a particular vision being born in your home about what actually matters in life and what doesn't matter in life. The only question is, what is coming off the line in your factory at home? What are you producing in your factory? So before we talk about what sorts of things should be forming the people in your home, I want to talk about the fact that the psalmist does not assume that this kind of formation is just intentional formation is going to happen without our action. Check this out from Psalm 78. He says, "We will not hide the ancient teachings from our children, but tell them to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord." Notice the verb, tell, all right? That is an important piece there. Not hope that these kids absorb it, not trust the Christian schools to handle it, not assume that the youth pastor is going to cover that ground. Tell. In other words, faith is not inherited through proximity. Faith is not inherited through proximity. Right now, something today is forming you and the people who live underneath your roof. Your schedules are forming you. Your friends Their friends, their schedules are forming them. The question is not, am I being discipled and formed? You are. Absolutely, you are right now. With whatever rhythms you have in your home, you are being formed and whittled into a certain kind of arrow. Your home is already a disciple factory. The question is, who or what is doing the discipling, the forming in your home? And so, what's the answer? How do we get better at being disciple factories? Well, I want to submit to you today one of the primary means that God gives us to form a family that Jesus describes here at the end of Mark chapter 3. A family designed and looking like a family that is submitted to the will of Jesus. We can achieve some of this formation through something we call family worship. And that's what I want to talk about this morning for just a moment here, family worship. Now, before half of you check out, because that sounds something like that requires maybe a pipe organ and a seminary degree, stay with me here, okay? Family worship is very simple. It is simply this: consistently gathering those under your roof to center your home around Jesus. If you want the kind of family that is described at the end of Mark 3, this is going to be important for you. This could mean a single person. You're the one person under your roof. Gather yourself and center yourself on Jesus. It could apply to a group of housemates, a husband and a wife, or a home with children in it. Done consistently over time in the ordinary moments of real life, the rhythm of family worship will be one of the most powerfully formative things that you ever do. I want to be honest with you before we take any steps further down this path, though, because if I don't say this now, everything that follows from this point in this little talk is going to feel like a guilt trip with a cute little Bible bow on the top, okay? I don't want this to feel like that. I want this to be an encouragement for you moms and for all of us today. There is no formula that works on every kid. Some of you have multiple kids and you already know this all too well. Same house, same parents, same Jesus, completely different humans, right? And completely different outputs. One kid might hear, okay, kids, it's time to open up the word. And they go get their Bible, they flip it open, they get their collection of highlighters, and they're just leaning in, eager for dad or mom to share with them from the word. And another kid might hear time to open the word, kids, and suddenly the bathroom needs skyrocket, right? Suddenly they are just very hungry, or maybe it's time to ask that really burning question about dinosaurs that's been, hankering at them for a long time. That's normal, right? We have different kids with different postures toward Jesus at different times in their lives. The parenting books that we read often act like there's one clear and clean path to getting the kind of kids that we want, right? Just do this, follow these steps, and just watch what will magically come out of that disciple factory in your house. And you're sitting there, bro, like you've never met my specific child, right? That's what happens when I read these books, at least. So I want to take the pressure off here at the beginning. What I'm about to give you, are not guarantees. They are not formulas. They're just faithful rhythms. That's all that they are. And the grace underneath of it all is this. This does not rest on you getting it right. It rests on you staying close to Jesus, however imperfectly. It does not rest on you getting it right, just on walking, more like limping with Jesus. Because part of who you are right now, this is a sobering reality that I've been reflecting on a lot this week. Part of who you are right now is shaping something very beautiful in your kids. The gifts that you have that God has given to you is shaping something beautiful in your kids. That's amazing. We give God glory and praise for that. But you need to wrestle with this reality. Because part of who you are is probably wounding them in ways that you can't fully see yet. Not because you're a bad parent, but because you are a human being. Most of us probably have a conversation coming sometime in the future with our kids, where we sit across the table from our grown kids and we hear in words, in their stories, the specific ways that we let them down. Maybe some of us in here have already had that conversation with our kids. But can I say this as warmly and lovingly and graciously as I can? This is actually good news if you'll let it land, okay? God is going to use those hard parts of their story that you're responsible for, their wounds and your lack. He's going to use those things as part of their story. The seasons where you got it wrong over and over again. He's going to take all of those things and he's going to use those things to form your kids into beautiful aerodynamic arrows that light up the darkness, that dent the darkness for the glory of the King and for the good of the world. He's using all those things to form the exact kids that he wants to be fired out into the world. The arrows that fly the furthest aren't the ones that are protected from every difficulty. They're the ones that were whittled and worked on and shaped under pressure and refined over time. So your job is not to produce a kid with the cleanest testimony. Do not protect your kids from their testimony. Your job is to make sure that in the middle of whatever their story turns out to be, Jesus is in it. That is your job, day in and day out. That your fingerprints point toward him, that when they look back, they can say, my parent was not perfect. Duh. They're going to know that. But they kept aiming me at something that was worth flying toward. That's it. That is the calling. They kept aiming me, however imperfectly, at something that was worth flying toward. And of course, if you could see all the ways that you're falling short right now, you would change those things immediately. I know I would, but you can't, which is exactly why you cannot parent from a place of control. Trust a God who is not surprised by any of it, who knew exactly whom he was entrusting those kids to. He knew it. He sees every moment, the good ones that you would rather forget, that you definitely hope your kids forget. But he has not looked down one time and thought, man, I made a mistake with that family. I should have put that kid somewhere else. Don't carry that weight. He did not make that mistake. You are not the hero of your child's story. Jesus is. Keep aiming them at something worth flying toward. This brings us to another observation. First, your home is already a disciple factory. Second, God has always done it this way, through this thing called family worship. So throughout history, God has used ordinary, consistent rhythms in the home to produce explosive faith. We see this from Genesis all the way to the end of your Bible in like the straight, unbroken line. So check out the ordinary ways this extraordinary transformation happens in your home. Genesis 18:19, almost on the first page of Scripture. God calls on Abraham to command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord. So you've got this massive mission of God, this cosmic, world-altering mission moving forward through a mom and a dad talking to their kids over a meal. That's the delivery mechanism God chose. So God is about to do something amazing through Abraham. He's going to change the course of history through this man and through his kids. And how is he going to do that? Through faithful deposits from mom and dad into the lives of the kids. And so this is the delivery mechanism God chose to change the world. Don't rush past this. This is how seriously God takes the conversation that happens at your dinner table every day. Let's keep traveling the path. Fast forward a few hundred years, and we find the drumbeat is still the same. Hear, O Israel, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. These words shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. And check the context out. When you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Moses is not saying, once a week, gather your family at the church up the road in a dedicated, air-conditioned space with a structured curriculum and a laminated lesson plan. That's not it, though we're happy to provide that for you here, okay? He's saying, when you walk around, when you sit down in the living room, when you rise up, this is not a program. It's just a posture of living. That's how we make arrows. Deuteronomy 6 is basically saying, stop waiting for the right moment and realize that all the moments are the right moment. The commute is the moment. The dinner table is the moment. The argument about homework is the moment. Coming in the New Testament, and the pattern does not change. Paul is writing to Timothy, a young pastor who's kind of like just a little wobbly, starting out in his ministry career. And so Paul is trying to steady him a little bit and say, it's going to be okay, man. And when Paul tries to steady him, look what he points to, 2 Timothy 1. He says, remember the faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois, and then your mother Eunice, and now in you. A grandmother, a mother, making steady deposits, probably wondering sometimes if it was even sticking at all. And then Timothy, a man whose letters have shaped the theology of the global church for 2,000 years, grew out of the soil of this faithful home. Don't underestimate the eternal weight of what feels like ordinary faithfulness. Lois didn't even know that Lois and Eunice didn't know they were raising a man whose words would disciple billions. She just knew that she loved Jesus and she loved her grandson and son, and they just kept making those deposits. And just notice too, for maybe some of us in broken homes or maybe not prototypical homes, Timothy's father is largely absent from the story here, which means little Timmy's arrow whittling years happened through two women operating without a complete picture, without a perfect family situation, doing the little they could with what they had. So if you're sitting here today and thinking to yourself, man, my family situation is so jacked up, it's too complicated, it's too broken for God to use, Lois and Eunice would like a word with you this morning too. Let's keep going. Paul makes it explicit, Romans 6, verse 4, fathers and mothers, bring your children up in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord. That's a command directed at parents. But I should say, parents, you cannot fully delegate this. You can be helped in this process and journey. You can be supported. You can be resourced, and we want to do that for you the best we can here at Anchor Church. But you cannot hand off discipleship and consider it handled. You cannot hand it off and consider it handled, because the moment you do, and again, I say this with all the pastoral love that I can muster up, when you do hand that off, you drift right back into Mark 3, into that situation where Jesus is like a consultant, but not actually the authoritative center. Jesus on the edges, present, but not definitive. I hope the point is clear. We've walked quickly kind of through the scriptures and shown how this kind of family worship rhythm is how God, one of the tools, the pathways that God has given to us to whittle down our arrows. The home is the primary place where faith is formed. And somebody in your home is going to have to choose to be intentional about it. I'm going to give you some tools to do that here in just a second. But first, I want to tell you a little story about a man that I read about this last week. His name is Rick Husband. He was the commander of the space shuttle Columbia. Before one of his missions, he knew that he was going to be gone for a while, a few weeks. And so he sat down before he left town and he recorded 18 videos for his family. One for each day that he would be away from his family. As a Christian, he created these 18 moments where he opened the scriptures on video, prayed, and looked into a camera and tried to remind his wife and his kids that they were there to love another man more than him. And then, maybe you know this part of the story, maybe you don't, but tragically, the Columbia's mission did not go as planned. The shuttle broke apart as it re-entered Earth's atmosphere, and Rick Husband never came home. Which means those 18 videos, can you imagine how precious they are to that family now? Those 18 videos weren't just thoughtful, they were the last spiritual deposits he ever made in the lives of his family. That's a legacy, man. I want to leave a legacy like that. I'm sure you do, too. Listen, no matter who lives under your roof right now, none of us knows how many videos we have left. None of us knows how many dinners, how many tuck-ins, how many car rides, how many ordinary Tuesday nights remain. Rick Husband didn't know either. He just kept making those deposits, kept pointing his family to Jesus. And when his time ran out, the deposits were already in the account. So yes, gathering with your church on Sundays is essential. This gathering right here is essential. Don't let it go, but it is not sufficient. Sundays were never designed to carry the full weight of forming a soul that will one day stand before Jesus. That load-bearing weight belongs in the home for yourself and for those who live under your roof. Okay, hopefully we've established that this is God's design, that it's been the pattern since the beginning. And now some of you are sitting in here thinking, I guarantee it, great. But what does this actually look like for me? On a Tuesday night when I'm exhausted, the kids are like feral, man, like they're doing their own thing. And I got nothing left in the tank to do any of this kind of thing. Fair question. I want to make it simple for us. Your home is already a disciple factory. God has always done it this way. And good news, this is simpler than you think. It's simpler than you think. Because one of the ways the enemy kills good intentions is through complexity. He's going to kill your good intentions through making it more complicated than it needs to be. You hear something this morning like, yeah, this matters. I believe in this. I want to do this. You feel the weight of it. And then your brain immediately begins like building the version that requires a curriculum and a laminated schedule and a Pinterest board. Stop, okay? It's a lot simpler than that. You only need 3 things: read, pray, sing. 3 words right there. Whether you are single or have a bunch of kids, these 3 things ought to be forming you under your roof on a weekly basis. Read, pray, sing. That is like the whole architecture. First, read. This is the heart of it. Open the Bible, open a devotional about the Bible, read a portion together. After you read, ask 3 questions, just 3. What does this show us about God or Jesus? What does this show us about us? How should we respond? Those are the 3 things, sort of metric through which we read the scriptures anytime we open the book. You don't have to have all the answers for your kids either. You're not teaching a seminary course. You're just opening the door and you're walking through it together as a family. And don't underestimate your kids' ability either. Someone said it like this: pack it in now, they can unpack it later, all right? Spend these early years packing it in. Let them in their later years unpack it then. But I will say that what you pack in right now matters. Not all Christian resources are created equal. A number of years ago, Eden, my oldest, she gets a couple dollars from me now. If you're new to the church, the people who have been here a long time know this, but if I name one of my kids or my wife in a sermon, I got to give them money for that. And so I can't remember what the fee is up to right now. Bob Morgan probably knows. He keeps trying to up it, what I have to give my kids every time. Inflation, yeah. So $5 for Eden here, since this story is about her. But a number of years ago, she came up to me holding a book about Noah and the ark that she had just read to her little sisters sometime during the day. And she hands it to me and says, "Daddy, this book doesn't even use God's name." Which was a shocking, amazing surprise for me. I gave her a high five for even noticing something as nuanced as that. Gave her a high five, and then I threw the book in the burn pile out back. That's not kidding. That's not true. I'm kidding. But in reality, I did remove it quietly from circulation in our house. Because here's the problem. Like I said, not all Christian resources are created equal. There are a lot of resources that are marketed as Bible resources that are really just like moral lessons that are buttoned up in a Bible costume, okay? Like, be brave like David, be kind like Noah, be courageous like Esther. Being brave, being kind, being courageous ain't never got nobody into heaven, okay? Jesus is the way, the ticket to the Father. And so if that's all our kids are getting, these sort of moralized, diluted Bibles, we've only really handed them a self-help book with ancient branding. We've got to be really careful about the resources our kids are taking in. The Bible is not primarily about making us good. It's not. It's about showing us that we're not good and that we desperately need a Savior who is good. Family worship is not good-centered. It is God-centered. Read. Pray. Don't overthink this. When your kids hear you pray for them by name, with specificity, with real emotion, something happens in them that no sermon, no curriculum, no youth group event can ever replicate. They realize, my parent actually believes this. That's formative in a way that is almost impossible to replicate in any other context. So pray for their fears, pray for their friendships, their doubts, pray for their salvation right in front of them. And here's a simple trick that we've discovered through the years that keeps prayer from feeling like a ritual that you're performing and keeps it fresh. Pray out of whatever scripture passage that you just read. Pray the truths of it over your family or over yourself. Let scripture shape your prayers. Read, pray, sing. Some of you just went total cringe on me. Josh, bro, I do not sing. I know. I hear you sometimes. Your kids know. The Lord knows. But sing anyway, or at least listen to some singing, because singing does something that speaking cannot. There's a reason the songs that we sing here at Anchor Church form you more deeply often than the sermons you hear here at Anchor Church. You probably don't remember many of the sermons that I've preached, but I bet you remember a lot of the songs that we sing. That's because music is sticky in a way that almost nothing else is. Okay, so I can feel some of you right now. I can see the gears working in your brain. It's running all the numbers on your actual life right now and your actual rhythms and arriving at a conclusion right now that sounds a little bit of something like, I want this, I believe this is good for me and or for my family, but I'm running the numbers on my actual life and this is not going to fit into what my life actually looks like. I hear you, and I'm definitely not here to say that or pretend that adding anything into your full life is going to be easy. Schedules are real, exhaustion is real, but I just do want to nudge on you for just 1 second here, because I think we've trained ourselves to ask the wrong question. We keep asking, man, do I even have time for this? That's not actually the question. The question is, what have I decided is non-negotiable in my life rhythms? Your calendar is not neutral. It is a theological document. It tells the truth about what you actually believe is important. Can I say that again? Your calendar is not neutral. It is a theological document. It tells the truth about what you actually believe is important. So the real question is not really, do you have the margin? It's do you have the conviction? And so I want to make this as practical as possible. Make a plan. If you don't decide what you're going to read before you sit down, you're not going to read. Decision fatigue is real, all right? If you need help on identifying some resources that would be helpful for you, holler at me afterwards. I'd love to, or email me, or shoot me a text. I'd love to shoot you some good ideas if you're kind of stuck. Make a plan. Also, pick a time. Dinner, bedtime, breakfast. At our house, it's breakfast, which means it's normally happening in various states of consciousness, and someone is usually mid-meltdown about something at that time in the morning. But it happens. Steady deposits, day in and day out. Pick a time when your family is most likely to just show up, and then protect it like it's something that you actually believe is worth protecting. Protect the time. Make a plan, pick a time, keep it brief. Nobody says this needs to be an hour, all right? 10 minutes is fine. Listen, 10 minutes every day over the course of a year is 61 hours in the Word. Whoa, it's a lot. Just keep hammering away at that. Keep it brief. Keep it simple. Some nights you're going to read a chapter from Luke and your kid is immediately going to announce what their favorite episode of Bluey is right after that. It's okay. That's the way it goes. You're not trying to produce one extraordinary night that they remember forever. You're trying to be the kind of family where Jesus is just present day in and day out. Where talking about him feels normal. Where praying together isn't formal or weird or reserved for holidays. That doesn't come in one great night. It comes from 1,000 ordinary nights. And you're going to miss days. You're going to have seasons where this falls completely apart. Been there and done that myself. Where you wake up 3 weeks later and realize you haven't done it in a minute. That's okay. The enemy loves nothing more than turning a missed week into a missed month into a missed lifetime. Do not hand him that. All right, we're going to bring this to a close now. Band, would you guys join me up here? And we're going to start back we'll go back to where we started in Mark 3. Jesus seated in this house, surrounded by chaos. It's buzzing. There's so many people and so much energy in the space. It's being pressed in on every side. His family is outside, calling his name. He's looking around and seeing the people at his feet. And he says, here, these people right here, this is the vision. This is my mother and my brother and my sister and my father. That is the vision for our homes. The goal is not just kids who behave. It's people who sit at the feet of Jesus and say, like these people said at his feet, your will, not mine, Jesus. That's what we are raising up, the kinds of arrows we are whittling away at. That's the kind of family Jesus calls his own. And that kind of family, whether you have kids in your home or not, is not going to happen accidentally. It gets built in tiny little increments that feel ordinary, but turn out to be eternal over the course of time. Listen to this, Psalm 118:15. The voice of rejoicing and salvation is in the tents of the righteous. It's not in the temple. It's in your tents where you live, the ordinary places, the unremarkable spaces, the homes that don't look impressive from the outside, but are being quietly and faithfully and persistently ordered around Jesus. Your tent counts. Moms, here's what I know about you. I know that you are not just a mom. You are a bow in the hands of God. A bow doesn't aim itself. A bow doesn't get to choose the target. A bow doesn't decide how far the arrow flies or where it lands or how hard it hits when it gets there or what it hits when it gets there. A bow does one thing. It holds. A bow holds under pressure. It's bent further than feels comfortable. Often it is bent further than feels sustainable, but it holds. It holds. And it holds specifically because the archer knows what he's doing with those arrows that are in your quiver. He sees the targets you can't see quite yet. And he has purposes for those arrows that are bigger than you can possibly imagine right now. So let me leave you with this question. It's not a guilt question. I don't intend it to be that way at all. It's really just a vision question. What are your children becoming by the ways that you are investing in them right now? By the rhythms that you are embracing right now? If you don't have kids, what are you becoming by the rhythms you're embracing right now? Moms, again, are you spending your best energy aiming them at something that will mean nothing on the last day? Because here is the reality. There's a very tiny chance your child becomes a professional athlete, an even smaller chance to become famous. But there is a 100% chance that they will stand before King Jesus. Are you parenting them with that rock solid center at the reality of your home and your rhythms? So don't ultimately aim their lives at what is temporary, aim them at what is eternal. Whittle carefully, stay consistent, hold under pressure. And when you miss, and you will, the archer doesn't drop the bow. He's going to keep holding you. Send these arrows into the world to light it up with the presence and the power of Jesus.